Okay, so good morning, everyone. Good morning in the States. Good afternoon for those joining in Europe. Once again, this is a global event. Appreciate you all coming on. My name is Fareed Abdelkader. I'm the president of the ISACA Metropolitan New York chapter. It's an honor and privilege to be able to provide insights from a leadership perspective as a chapter to those joining us from around the world. We are a chapter 4,500, yet we have the ability to hit the global stage, which is a lot more than that. So if you like what you see, feel free to send the invitation to others. We have this every other month. This package was designed to give insights to those looking to get insights from leaders on different types of principles of leadership. We are joined today by Chad Reyes, who is the founder of Lions Pride Leadership. It's an organization designed to develop entrepreneurs and business leaders to be intentional and strategic in becoming all they're designed to be. Chad has helped us get this program off the ground and kicked off the first series 2 months ago with Jim Ambrosini, past president and huge entrepreneur who's able to give valuable insights that many of you have seen as helpful. And as a result of that, we're continuing this series for a few more editions to see how things are coming along. I can't really put into words the value that Chad has brought to the team. Chad is actually giving insights to both the chapters on the inside of the continuum and then the external continuum with folks like Nigel James and folks like Jim Ambrosini and a lot of other folks that are leaders in the industry. This is industry agnostic and intended to be relevant to anyone in particular. So I just want to tell you a little bit about Chad, who will be helping us out initiate and kick this second series off. Chad Reyes is a purpose-driven entrepreneur. He's a personal friend. He's a speaker, an author, and a multiplier of leaders. He founded 3 major organizations that have helped leaders become better leaders, folks both in the 13 to 18-year-old group, more like a Lions Club. It's called I Am Empowering. And Wealth and Legacy Group, where he actually works with major investors to further their advancement in their investments. Chad is someone that puts his heart into everything he does and has made this a personal promise to initiate and help our leaders become better leaders, and hopefully you all to have valuable insights. Without further ado, Chad Reyes, if we can introduce you, who's a John C. Maxwell coach, by the way. Thank you for coming on and helping us discuss Principle 2.
Well, Fareed, thank you so much. Honestly, it's been a blessing to spend many years with you as friends. And when you said, let's do this program, I said, I'm on board. And the reason why I'm on board is because I think leadership is so needed in the time that we're living in more than ever before. I think everyone that's on this call would agree that COVID has not been easy. But people who are better leaders got through COVID a little bit easier. With that said, I want to jump in to what I'm going to be sharing today. So I'm just excited to be with you guys. I'm going to share my screen. So just give me one moment. There we go. All right. So on my screen, you can see, hold on, we're going to start from the beginning. There you go. So you can see that there's 5 frogs on a log. And wherever you are, no matter where you are in the world, no matter where you are in your career, I want you to think through this for one moment, that there's 5 frogs on that log and 4 decide to jump off. In your mind, how many are left? 5 on the log, 4 decide to jump off. How many are left? The answer I get when I'm in crowds that are in person, I hear there's 1 left. But the truth of it is that there's really 5 left. And the reason being is 4 decided to jump off. They never jumped off. And that, my friend, is the difference between good intentions and intentionally good. A lot of leaders have good intentions. They want to grow, they want to develop, they want to become better. But the stuff that we're going to share with you at ISACA in this leadership continuum, I want to personally challenge you to be intentionally good. Because good intentions, that's the world we live in. You know, I heard Maxwell say this often. He says that most people want to be judged on their intentions, but they want to judge others based off of their actions. So as you develop yourself as a leader, I just want to encourage you, be intentionally good. The world has good intentions, but intentionally good requires action behind your intention. So we're going to jump in, and I want to share with you a couple of statistics of why leadership matters, because you may be sitting down right now and saying, okay, great, I want to hear something about leadership, but why should I listen? So I'm going to give you a couple of statistics that should tell you why. Because 79% of employees will quit due to lack of appreciation. So if you're a leader of a division, understand that almost 80% of the people that are on your team will leave if they don't feel appreciated. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if you want to grow in the organization, be a leader who appreciates others and what they bring to the table. How about the second one here? 83% of organizations believe it's important to develop leaders at every level of the company, yet only 5% of the businesses have actually implemented leadership development at all levels. So that says to me that all of you that are on this call today that want to develop themselves as leaders, there's a tremendous opportunity out there, because there's a big gap between what they believe is important and actually what's happening. So if you want to grow in an organization, no matter what organization you're in, or if you own an organization, develop leaders. I've never heard a company say, I wish I had less leaders. Every time I hear a company say, we're trying to grow this initiative, it's always, I need more leaders. I need more leaders. Become an organization that grows leaders. You know, the next statistic says 69% of employees say they would work harder if they felt their efforts were recognized. You know, we live in a world that often people feel like they can't recognize, because if they do, the person's going to work less. That's a scarcity mentality. It will not take you, your organization, to the next level. 69% of employees say that if they felt recognized, they would work harder. Companies with employee engagement are 22% more profitable. I see companies spending so much money on marketing dollars. All they need to recognize is engage with your team members, engage with your employees, and you will be more profitable. Every study has shown it. Only 5% of businesses have implemented leadership development at all levels. This is a huge opportunity. And then the last one is, for every year a company delays developing their leaders, it costs them 7% of their annual sales. So the reason why I'm bringing all this up is this, is that leadership is so key. It's even more important today than it ever has been, because of what we've been going through these last 2 years. And I want to challenge you, whether you're the owner of a company, whether you're an employee of that company, whether you're a managing director of that company, or you're the CEO of that company. Invest in people, develop people, you get the best out of people. And choose to be an intentionally good leader as you continue on your leadership journey. So I want to share with you quickly, we have something called our master operating system. These are the 8 areas that businesses need to be focusing on. If you notice, we don't have finances on there. And the reason why we don't have finances is because these 8 areas impact your finances. So if you do well in these 8 areas, you have good finances. So today we're going to be focusing and specializing in the people side of it. And as part of the leadership continuum, we're going to be talking about the 8 steps to developing people, which you're seeing right now on your screen. Now, I'm going to do a little plug. I want to encourage you to, if you didn't hear last month, the first session, which was in December, if you didn't hear it, I want to encourage you to go back on the ISACA website and listen to that, because it is a continuum. So we're building off of the last one that we did. So I encourage you to go back. We spoke about You Are Here. This month, we're going to be talking about Identify. So I just want to give you a little quick overview. These are the 5 levels of leadership. Last month, we went through that, so I'm not going to speak much on this. But this month, we're going to be talking about Identify and how important Identify is, because when you look at any organization, the organizations that are able to identify team members that fit the team, fit the culture, are organizations that thrive. And organizations that just look to hire people because they need to fill a role without really identifying what are the gifts, the talents of that person. Are they a good fit for our culture? Those companies really struggle. And the companies that struggle typically have a revolving door. People are in, people are out, people are in, people are out. And that revolving door becomes very difficult. So I want to just encourage you that as you hear today, Nigel James, as he's going to share his journey, you're also going to hear about how how important it was to identify the right people for his team. He's going to, I mean, him and I were talking before and also leading up to this. And I love the information that he's going to be sharing with you, because he's going to take you on the journey. He's going to take you on the journey from where he started, right? Where in Trinidad, and then he went to Barbados. That's where he was, born. And then he's going to take you on the journey to where he is today with Morgan Stanley. But one of the things you're going to hear a consistent theme is how important it is to identify good people. Because when you're looking for good people, you'll be able then to recognize when they walk by. Years ago, I heard John Maxwell say this. He said, it's too late to begin to prepare when the opportunity shows itself. And I feel like so often we start preparing when the problem exists. But organizations and companies should always be looking for talent. And we should be attracting talent. I believe that organizations in the future that are going to be the organizations that are going to thrive, they're going to be the organizations that have a leadership culture and attract other leaders. So that's the second step of the 8 steps to developing people. The first one is you are here. Second is identify. So we're going to be going deep into that today, but I'm going to give you a little context and then we're going to hand it back over to Fareed. The third step is awareness. So in 2 months from now, we're going to be talking about awareness, and then giftedness and how important giftedness is. I say this often, that people that are in their weaknesses, the best they'll ever be is average, but people that are in their strengths, they start at average with the ability to become great. And I don't know about you, but I look for to build my organizations around giftedness, because I want my organization to be great. I don't want to be mediocre, because people shouldn't pay for mediocrity. Then we're going to be going through styles, character, motivation, and then the last one is the journey. And I'll just share a little quickly on this. And the reason why I'm not going in depth is I want it to be a carrot. I want you to come back. I want you to come back and hear each month that we get back together, every other month, on one of the different steps to developing people. But the journey is so key. And I'll share this, and then Fareed, I'm going to hand it to you in about 60 seconds. The journey is important because I gave this story last month, 2 months ago. My older brother is a chef. He's an amazing chef, and he cooks the most amazing ribs. And every time he cooks the ribs, my wife and I say, wow, these were amazing. I love them. But then I go home, I fire up the barbecue and I try doing it, and they suck. Quite frankly, they're terrible, right? And I get frustrated. So finally, I call him up one day and I say, Mark, I'm sick and tired of this. What do you do with your ribs? And he tells me, well, tell me what you do. And I tell him, well, I put the barbecue on, I put the barbecue sauce, and I throw them on. And he said, well, let me tell you what I do. He said, I take those ribs, I put them in the oven, I put it on 275 for 3 hours in tin foil, those ribs are. And then I take them out after 3 hours, I put them on the stove, I put the barbecue sauce on, and I've had now the barbecue on for an hour on a low flame. And then I put it on for another 45 minutes to an hour. He said, and the ribs that you like are delicious because of the process I use. And today, my friend, I want to share with you that leadership is a journey, no different than the process my brother uses. And a lot of times what leaders want to do and people want to do is they want to circumvent the process so that they can get the ribs done quicker. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. You need to go through a process to developing people. And that's why my partners and I have developed 8 steps to developing people, because if you follow them, you will have a better organization. You'll have a better division. So with that said, I'm super excited that Nigel James is going to be talking about identify. So Fareed, I'm going to hand it over to you. I'm just excited to be on this journey with you, all of you.
Thank you for that, Chad. And that rib story really hits home. It gives perspective as to just having the recipe isn't enough. It's the backstory and the experience that drives the change. So thank you for that. So just to give you some background on Nigel James. Nigel James is a managing director of Morgan Stanley and serves as the head of audit transformation, operations, and practices, a new role for him. Congratulations. He's also a strategic advisor to the chapter executive team for the ISACA Metropolitan New York chapter. Nigel joined Morgan Stanley's team in 2006 before moving into internal audit in 2007. During that time, he covered investment management, wealth management, and institutional securities technologies, and later became the global head of technology audit. Prior to Morgan Stanley, He had more than 20 years of information technology and information risk management experience at IBM and IBM Business Partners, managing an offshore development team and Nestle. He brings a plethora of leadership positions and style that's applicable to all of us. It's an honor to have you, Nigel. Thank you for being here today to speak about Principle 2, Identify. Nigel?
Hi. Thanks for the warm introduction, Fareed, and for the opening remarks, Chad. I'm about to start sharing, so just bear with me 1 second. Hopefully everyone can see that. Is it visible to everyone?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. All right, so thanks. As I said, it's really an honor to be here with you all. When Fareed reached out to me and he said he was going to have this series, I thought, oh, what a wonderful idea. And then he sort of further went on and he said, and I'd like you to speak at it. And I thought, oh, wow, okay. I'm not sure what I have that people would want to hear. I consider myself a pretty average person who's gone about doing the job that I was asked, always trying to reach for more than what I had, ambitious, just like everyone else. But I certainly acknowledge that there were some learnings that I had along the way, and Fareed thought it would be really good if I could come and share these with you. So I'm here today as Nigel James, a member of the chapter. I'm not here today as Nigel James, as a managing director at Morgan Stanley or representing the firm. What I'll share with you all are my own personal experiences through many jobs, through many roles, starting at the beginning. And I hope it will resonate. Why am I here? I'm here because not only is leadership important, but quite frankly, ISACA is important. And as you hear my story, you'll understand why I say that. I've had the opportunity to work with the chapter since I came to the US in 2003. You heard Chad mention my journey started in Trinidad, which is where I'm from. I did all of my formative education in Trinidad. The university or the trade school is what the equivalent was that I studied computer engineering in. IBM had a branch in Trinidad, and I was part of the first cohort that they hired from that branch to evaluate the program. Fast forward a couple of years after working with IBM, this little thing called Y2K kicked in. There was a need to have a lot of software engineering trying to solve the two-digit problem. Software Development Center was opened in Barbados. I moved across. I worked there in the engineering space. And I worked there for many years. That firm eventually closed the center in Barbados and it moved to the US. So then I came to the US in 2003 and I looked around and I realized that I was at a bit of a disadvantage. Everyone in the work environment, most people had grown up in the US. They had been schooled in the US. They had friends and working relationships in the US. They had a network. I came in and I did not necessarily have that outside of the firm that I transferred with and the role that I was playing for them. And so I had been with ISACA in Barbados because we used to get audited by one of the US firms that we did service work for. And at that time, I thought, well, it'd be a good idea to understand the questions that I'm being asked. And so I did the certification. And when I came to the US, I thought, well, this is a global organization. Let me connect with the local chapter. Let me give back. Let me do outreach. Let me see how I can leverage that as a network. At the time, I worked with pretty much most presidents from that time forward. So, Jerry Trube was the president at the time, for those who may know that far back, Dave Kippen, Felix Ramirez, Jim Ambrosini, Karen, Alex, I'm sure I'm missing somebody, all the way through to Fareed. And, I've always had the opportunity to help serve where I can, as simple as handing out pamphlets at events to helping the chapter select were some award recipients through managing the voting process to here today speaking with you all. And so the theme through all of this is giving back. And so I'm here because I like to give back. I like to give back specifically to ISACA, which I think is just a wonderful organization. And the challenge I'll tell you as members is, you get out of something what you put into it. You're certainly members, you certainly are paying membership dues, and there's great content that is delivered as a consequence of that you have access to, but also think about what more you can get out of things as you think about your relationship with ISACA. So the next couple of slides that I'll walk through, I'll probably take about 30 minutes plus or minus. What I thought about when I was asked to speak about the second principle, identify, is I thought about who are we looking for, and oftentimes, in my career, as you've heard, I've changed companies, I've changed physical locations. I have within Morgan Stanley, my most recent role, jobs, I should say, I've covered many different business areas. I've had different levels of responsibility covering those business areas to now the most recent role that I have. And in each situation, whether it was a consequence of circumstances, and by that I mean, for instance, you inherited a team, the prior person was there and they left, whether it was a consequence of ambition, there was a role that you were tapped to do and you went off and you did it, or whether or not you were asked to join and participate something. Ultimately, the key question always sort of came back to, well, I have this team, and depending on what the entry was into the team, there is a view on the left around, well, do I shape the team that I inherited? I get to build, I get to use a clean slate to think about the team that I'm going to build. And then if I've joined a team, well, now I'm trying to influence. I may not be the leader, I might be somewhere in that chain. Ultimately, you're trying to get to the team that you need. And how do you know what the team that you need is, right? That's sort of the first question. For me, I answer that by asking, what's the mission? You don't know if you have the correct ingredients until you know what you're trying to make. And to be able to do that, you really need to understand who your stakeholders are. You need to understand what they want. And each stakeholder will have a different need, and you'll need to understand how success is measured. And of course, when you think about stakeholders, you're not only thinking about the people who are your direct recipients, meaning your management team. They certainly have expectations. But ultimately, the product of your work is going to somebody very likely larger than just your manager. It's their manager. It may be a board. It may be a regulator in the case of an audit shop. And the question is, each one of them have a very different set of expectations in terms of what the output should look like, the quality of the process that produces that output, the caliber of the people that are helping to build it. And making sure you understand that, to me, is the first ingredient in trying to understand, do I have the correct people? And to answer that question of identify. The next question, obviously, is how is success measured? For some, it may be measured very numerically. For others, it may be very qualitatively. And the question becomes, how do I know what good looks like? Again, to be able to understand and to be able to articulate that back to my team so that they know what good looks like and they know how to march towards it. So you've understood what the mission is, and it's pretty clear. Now you look at the team that you have. And so this is an instance of where you've joined a team or you've inherited a team. I find it very useful to understand each person as an individual. If you're only speaking about the team and not the individuals, then you've certainly missed the opportunity to really understand each and every person and the extent to which you're going to be able to satisfy their personal needs, their ambitions, maximize their capabilities and really motivate them. One way to do this, which I've done a lot, is a personality test. And so a personality test doesn't make a difference if it's Myers-Briggs, it doesn't make a difference if it's a DISC. The idea behind it is it is a great, if you will, neutralize it. Makes everybody come down to a set of criteria within which we understand who that person is, what motivates them, what demotivates them, and how they like to be communicated to or with. It's very interesting because once you do this within a team, what you'll find happens is that people start to connect. Well, this person is an X and I'm also an X, so we have something in common. And so immediately you start to see that bond. Well, this person is a Y and I recognize that Y likes to receive information like this, and that also forms a different bond. I recall when I did a test with a leadership team, it was very interesting because the general auditor and myself, and I didn't think we had a lot in common, but it turned out through that DISC test that we did that we actually did have a lot more in common. And that was just a different and another avenue for us to connect. Once you've understood sort of how people want to be interacted with, and the next thing is around ambitions. This is a one-on-one conversation about career. Some people want to be what I call transitory. Some people want to have experiences and then move on. Some people want a long-term career. Really understanding what motivates people and where they're trying to head and how you can help them get there, extremely important. People have different capabilities. We all do. And the idea of the leader is not to be expert about everything. It's to know what you're good at and to leverage and get the rest out of the teams that you have, right? And then, as I said, motivation, very important. If people aren't motivated, it doesn't make a difference if you've assembled the best team. You will not get the job done. So following on from that, you have identified the team that you have a good sense of people's strengths. And then the next question is, well, where do people play? So following on from what I said a little bit earlier, you're going to find that there are people who are utility players. I can ask them to do many roles, and they do them equally at a fairly decent level. So there are some people, however, who are specialists, and they're not utility players. And if you put a specialist in a utility player role, they will fail. And so the question you're really trying to answer through this process is, how do I leverage the best out of people given the skills that they have? Some people only want to be a specialist, and some people only want to be utility. They want to have many experiences. And then your substitutes, I sort of call those the people that you bring in and out of a team. They don't want to be necessarily tied to any one thing for a long period of time. They want the ability through mobility, through different experiences to get a lot of quick wins and then move on. So as you bring your team together, you need to ask yourself the question, well, do I need a team full of utility players? Do I need some specialists, but not many specialists? Do I need bandwidth and elasticity to move in and out? So there's some key substitutes. Who are those people? Where would I put them? Validate with them the type of role that you're asking them to play and make sure that that role resonates. So now you have the question about the team itself. The composition of the team, not just in terms of their motivations, but in terms of sort of their, drilling into capabilities a little bit more. We need to understand whether or not you have people who are leaders, whether you have people who want to be led, and so therefore they're followers. You want to know whether you have, and this is a term that I borrowed from one of my prior managers, stirrers. A stirrer is someone who, when we're in a conversation and we're getting to consensus, this person can provide an alternate view to help stimulate and push us. We're going to have a composition of high performers, folks who will really help us to propel towards our goal. And then we'll have some steady performers. We need people to keep the regular drumbeat going. And then we will have folks who are innovators. They come with bright ideas, but as we heard, if we have a lot of ideas and no implementation, then we don't really have a product that we can march towards. And then you have, as I say, some people who are thinkers. I can bring to them a problem, and I know that they will take that problem and really unpack it and make it simple for the teams to follow.
Nigel, there have been a few questions coming in.
Please,
and because they're relevant to the slides, we just want to take a pause for a moment. First question says that you mentioned advantages and disadvantages coming in from when you came from overseas. So it looked like there was you were at a disadvantage coming in. Has COVID leveled the landscape for others?
It's a great question. I was going to touch somewhat on that. I think the answer is yes and no. And the reason why I say yes and no is, you know, for my own firm and for many firms that I've heard, you have numbers being thrown out of anywhere between 15 to 30% of employees having been hired in the last 2 years. And so as those employees come on board, we have better technology, Zoom as we're using today, and this allows people to get sort of connected really quickly. But you know, the job is more than just a 2D discussion across a screen. There are things about being in person, about understanding a culture, which it's less easy to do remotely. It's more easy to do when you're immersed in it and you're immersed with people around you, that you can not only sort of hear what they're saying on a screen, but you see what they're doing, how they're doing it, how that culture is rewarding them. And so, you know, I think that to get up to speed, to join a company during COVID and be productive, if we measure productivity by getting the job done, getting a task done, yes. If you're talking about all of the other things that make a career, which is more than just the task, building relationships, understanding the culture, having the quote unquote cooler conversation, which helps to connect people, I think that disadvantage exists. And if you're coming into a new culture, a new country, a new company, those things are layers that you have to work around.
That's a very good response, and you hit on one area. Someone had a question about that as well. With the remote environment being intentional, quote unquote, how do you nonchalantly grow rapport? Question, small talk.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what I do as a leader, and what I encourage new joiners to do is you put time on people's calendar and you intentionally say that this is just a general catch-up. And, you know, there's nothing that will replace the meeting before the meeting, right? We're all assembling into a conference room and there's that 5-minute window that everybody's just chatting. You're not going to be able to replace that unless your Zoom meeting started early and you were waiting on something to start, right? And even then, only 2 people can speak at once, otherwise no one hears what's going on. So you're not going to replace that. What you have to do is to be intentional. You know, generally at the start of a week, may not happen every week, but certainly every couple of weeks, I create a list of the people who I think I should just connect with, and I reach out and I connect. And I find times that make sense. So be intentional, figure out who you think you need to know, and to connect with. The other thing that I encourage folks to do is to sort of, we use a mentoring sort of a buddy system within our group. And the idea is that every new joiner is paired with a buddy, and that buddy helps them with the navigation, is accessible to them, helps to open those doors, helps to start those conversations. Once that's done, however, it's up on that. It's you know, it's again to that person to be intentional and to start the conversation. And you know, those will get you there, but at some level, you know, the personal in-person interaction is always going to be the one that, you know, you kind of can fall back on when especially in times of adversity.
It's a very, very good response. It's a lot of questions coming in.
Please, yeah.
You mentioned, quote unquote, clarifying what good looks like, unquote. Can you give an example of that? I think this refers to your last slide when you're talking about you connecting with your teams and giving them an example of what good looks like, but I guess they want an example of that.
Sure. And actually, it may make sense as I get into the material, if you don't mind holding on
Yeah.
for a minute. I can get to that one lower down in the material, and if I have missed it, then just remind me. And I do prefer on each slide, maybe what I'll do is I'll stop so that we can get in the questions. You know,
Yeah, let's do it.
if we were in a non-COVID world, Fareed, you and I would likely be on a stage with the audience, And as we got into each topic, we could entertain the questions. I think that's a lot better use of people's
Let's do it.
time. And just to be clear, so that everybody sort of understands the flow that I'm using here, I thought back when Fareed asked me to do this, I thought back of the many times I've had to quote unquote reinvent myself, join a new team, take on a new role. And without really, sort of having this written down, this generally follows the path of many things that I've done. And so what I really did here was to bring it all together. So I can certainly give examples along the way. And it's not necessarily, as I say, following a predefined script that I've read somewhere. This is sort of my own experiences, which is what I know the chapter wanted to hear. So I think we were here. So you've gotten to the point where you've assessed your team, the team that you have. You've understood that some people have ambitions. It's clear to you how you can help to help them fulfill their ambitions. You recognize that you have a mixed bag of achievers, of followers, and now you need to start to think about, and let me finish it on this slide before I go forward. Now you need to start to think about the team that you need, and part of that team, the advice that I give people who first get a team is, I say, if you took a blank page and you drew an org chart, and that org chart was being responsive to the mission that you understand you have to follow, what would it look like? And the picture on the right is meant to say that, right? You have certain roles. What would it look like? What would that structure look like? Both in terms of there's something called spans and layers. So both in terms of the span, how many roles you need, how many verticals, if you will, and how many layers you need below those roles. What would that look like? The ideal thing. And the reason why it's important to do that is because this is your opportunity to then say, okay, this is what the ideal organization would look like. Now, knowing what I know about the individuals that I'm working with, the folks that will be a part of my team, who fits into what role, right? Really important to do that versus saying, I have these people, I have this mission, let me go after it. Because you may be handicapping yourself and your team more than anything else in being able to achieve that mission, because you're not optimally organized. And so I would strongly encourage, if you've taken on a team, or you're in a team, think about what that optimal team should look like. Chad spoke earlier about fit and structure. This is what we're speaking about. Because if you want to really think about how best to achieve that, you have to be strategic, and being strategic means taking that first step of analysis. So you've decided my structure should look a certain way, and Fareed, let me know if there's a question on that last topic. You've decided your structure looks a certain way, and now you need to go out and hire. Hiring is and as I think about identify as a topic, hiring is probably the thing that I've noticed through my career. Not many companies do really well. What do I mean by that? I think it is used to fill places, but people aren't always extremely strategic about how they would leverage that hiring to fill that blank slate I referred to before. There are many ways that you can do this really well versus just filling the role. And I put a couple of things here that I have found help to get to a better outcome at the end of hiring. Referral programs being the first one. The people who work for you that fit the mold, that want to be at the firm, that understand the mission, and that understand the culture of the firm, they are your best advocates. And they also know the people who are like-minded through their own network, who can be really value add and would also be interested in working at the firm. Some firms do this really well, referral programs, others don't. Those that do it really well, they see a stickiness in the tenure of the people that join, but as well as a better fit from the beginning. The interview process, really, we have we have some firms that do sort of a stock set of character trait analysis at the beginning to try and level people out. But the interview really happens, in my mind, when you have the conversation with the candidate. And it's really important that when you have that conversation with the candidate, that you're not only understanding if they're a fit for the role in terms of the technical qualities, but are they a fit for the firm in terms of who they are. And there's two ways to do that. One is you ask the questions. Two is, and this is the most important part, that you allow them to ask questions. And through their questions, you understand what's on their mind and what are their ambitions. Oftentimes when I do an interview, there's two questions I ask. The first one is, what do you understand about the role? Quite frequently now, I'm not the first person who's doing the interview. I'm a little later down I'll just finish this thought for you and then I'll turn to you. I'm quite often later down the process. So, you know, the technical competencies have been thought about, but I want to understand what they, in their words, think this role is. And then the second question is, now that you've, you know, kind of played that back to me, tell me how this fits into your career path. Why is this the next job in your career path, and where do you see this path going? I'll pause here, Farida. I think you had a question.
Yeah, Nigel, there are quite a few coming in. There's a very interactive audience, apparently. So this is good. I'll try to keep it relevant to the slides that you're on right now. So one of them was just on the last slide going into this slide. How do you identify leaders, followers, slackers, and no-shows when you can't see what's going on in this remote environment?
Yeah, so I believe in management by walking about. So what does that mean? It means that I do a lot of skip level meetings. I meet people where they are. I am very intentional. When I led the tech audit organization, we grew up to about 110 folks globally. I had my admin schedule a one-on-one with every single person that worked with me at least once a year. Now, obviously, as you get to teams in the 300s, the 500s, that may not be possible. So that's when you do it in smaller cohorts. But skip level meetings are a really important part of the arsenal to get deep into the organization and really understand what you have. All right, depending on the size of your team. And when I say skip level, I don't mean that you're trying to, you know, get quote unquote feedback on somebody who's a direct report to you. You're trying to meet people where they are. You're trying to give them access to you. Later on in the slides, I have something that says you need to deliver your own message, and it allows you to do that. It's a very important part, as I say, of really assessing what you have. You're going to get feedback oftentimes from people that report to you. And many times they're going to be right, but guess what? Sometimes they may be wrong, or sometimes they may have a perspective. And doing skip levels and having upward feedback programs, that's the second thing you do. You have 360 processes where you allow people to anonymously provide upward feedback. And through all of these processes, you're going to kind of get, you know, stuff will shake out.
Yeah, there's a lot of, and what I'm finding here, Nigel, is that the questions are very, very in line with your slides. I know that Chad has a tremendous amount of background here too. I don't want to derail. What I think we'll do is we'll just answer one more question, maybe a question or two, and then move on and start to bracket these for the Q&A panel.
Sure.
So apologies for that, Chad. So there's two questions here that are very relevant to your slides. Evan sent one. There are more and more organizations that are trying to outsource internal audit teams to different locations based on cost concerns. How do we maintain the quality of the staff?
Yeah. About workforce strategy, there's many dimensions, and you mentioned cost. Cost is one. It's an important one, obviously, especially in you know, corporations that, you know, you still have the profit principle being out there. But you can't only be driven by cost. You have to be driven by quality. And so, you know, like any other large firm, we also have locations globally. We have locations that are in core metro areas. We have locations that are outside of metro areas. We have locations that are in quote unquote lower cost areas on a relative basis to the US. And that's out in Europe as well as it's out in India and other parts of Asia. So, you know, the point is how we decide what goes where is based on talent. And so we actually do studies and we say, well, okay, guess what? In this location, there's a lot of people who have PhDs. And so therefore we need quant work done. Guess what? That's a great place to go for quant work. And by the way, it's less quote unquote expensive than if I was trying to do this in New York, right? Oh, by the way, this location, they have really great cyber specialists and security specialists. It's like a factory there. They're just producing all of this talent. Well, okay, why don't we therefore look to place some capabilities there? So cost can't be the only motivator. If it is, it will catch up with you over time. You have to think about availability of talent, what talent pools work best where. You have to think about time zones, what type of work can be done 100% remotely in a different clock, what time zones, what things need to be hybrid. So maybe you pair work supervision in Europe with work being done out in Asia because there's a bigger overlap. There's all sorts of other considerations beyond cost to achieve ultimately, which is a blended rate, right? On a blended basis, your overall cost is lower, but it should never just be driven by cost, because talent is absolutely an important part of it. Talent and supervision of talent.
Definitely. And the last one here, which plays into that last one, then we'll move on and hold. Everyone, you could ask you questions. We'll just answering them during Q&A. Nigel, do you feel that the try before you buy style of hiring, example, temp to perm, identifies better fits for your team?
It's a good question. And for me, it's a little bit loaded. I mentioned at the beginning of my career at IBM, I was hired as one of the first graduating classes of a local school in Trinidad, a local engineering school. And quite frankly, that was a try before they bought, right? I was hired as an intern for a 6-month program, and I was fortunate enough that they kept me on. So that was an example. And what I would say there is, if you're experimenting, if you're tapping into something that you've not seen before, and you're trying to evaluate the caliber and the quality of something, I think that makes sense. Try before you buy. I think though, if you're looking for experienced hires, you need to commit to people just as you expect them to commit to you. If I was an experienced hire and you said, hey, can we go on a date for a couple of months before I propose, I would say, well, thank you very much for the opportunity, let's go somewhere else, right? So I think it really depends on the situation. I think, as I say, if you're trying to evaluate a capability, a service, something new, maybe, and you go in eyes wide open. Otherwise, I think you need to commit to people.
Thank you for that. Yeah, no, that's a nice response. Chad, do you have anything you want to add to that before we table all questions for Q&A?
No, I think what Nigel is saying is dead on point when it comes to how important it is to get the people, right? And to make sure that you're looking at finding the right people. I think, yeah, I'm looking forward to the discussion. I have a lot of points that I want to bring up, but I definitely will bring it up at the end. But I think Nigel's on point. I mean, organizations right now are struggling through this, and it's really hard to get someone on the team if you don't know what you're looking for. So really identifying and knowing clearly what you're looking for, and then you can then market it to find that right person on the team, and then making sure they fit the team, the culture. Not everyone's a good fit. They may be a great talent, but they may not be a good culture fit. So I think companies look at talent more than the actual personality of people.
Thank you for that response. So Nigel, we'll let you run that through. Any questions, everyone, ask them in the Q&A link, and we'll address them during our panel.
Hey, so Fareed, we're going through 12:45. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I'll try to wrap up in the next 7 minutes, so we can do 15 minutes of just pure Q&A. Does that sound good?
Yeah, and we'll have a few minutes for Chad to introduce the next topic for the next continuum level. Thank you for that. Perfect.
So interview process, I think I touched that. What I would say is the more you can get that fit question answered in the interview through dialogue, through a conversation, not just an inquisition, the better. I've had situations where, in the first 10 minutes of the conversation, the candidate and I both agreed, and not in a bad way, quite frankly, in a relieved way, that, maybe this wasn't it. Onboarding, extremely important. They had questions around COVID, so this is where I'll try to answer that question. The support you give to the onboarding process is as important as when you found the interviewer, the correct candidate. Often I've seen where, you make an offer, the organization goes dark, until the employee joins, especially in a remote environment, reaching out to the candidate, trying to connect with them, trying to introduce the company to them that they're about to join remotely in a virtual sense is extremely important. Monitoring them through that onboarding process. I mentioned, in fact, doing a buddy system, having them connect not just with somebody who's at their level, but at a senior level as well. All of those things are really important to help support somebody coming into the company, to make them feel welcome, to help them to navigate a virtual environment. Quite frankly, it's as important in a brick and mortar, but it's definitely even more important in a virtual environment. And then this last one, extremely a critical part to whether jobs work out or not. And this is about the supervision that you give to talent. There was a question around how do you identify top talent? How do you identify poor talent? Supervision plays a part of that. How well people are supervised, how well these expectations are laid out, how well they are trained, how well they are mentored, how well they are prepared for the job that you want them to do. And you're relying on every level of management and supervision to get that done. People may be great in-person managers, but they may not be great remote supervision managers. So therefore, you need to think about how you're going to train these people, right? Is it the same skill set? And the best way to do that is, well, you know what? Who in my team is doing it well? And you get that through the feedback I spoke about. And you say, okay, well, this person's doing it well. How do I figure out the secret sauce that's working with this person and resonating with the team, and get that sprinkled across the rest of my leadership team? But it is a key part to making sure that now that you've identified the correct person and you have your structure, you keep them. Otherwise, you've lost an opportunity. So, and I'm going to skip through this one really quick because I get to each of these points, but basically, you've hired people, you have your team, you've laid out the mission. Why are they going to follow it? So I think here, people follow something that makes sense, that resonates. It's simple, it's relatable, there's a stretch to it. It's not too much of a stretch that it's mission impossible. It has to be something that we can get, and you can iterate on that. So you can say, over an X period of time, we're getting to here, but initially we're going to get to this phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. The key for me here is not having somebody else take your message, right? When you think to all the great leaders and you think about all the periods of adversity that they've had to work through, whether that's a Winston Churchill, right, in World War II, they didn't send somebody to send their message of where we are, where we need to go, inspiring the team, right? They did it themselves, and they did it in clear, simple, relatable terms that resonated with people. And so when you're defining success, you have to think about it in that way. The other thing is, as you think about that, why would people buy what you're selling? What's in it for me, right? And so, for some people, it's career growth. I want to get to the next level. I will join your team if that gets me to the next level. For some people, it's experiences. I've had a long set of experiences doing this role. I really want to try something new. Is this a space that you'll allow me to grow and try something new? For others, it's rewards, it's incentives, right? Some of those are compensation. Some of them are job flexibility. Some of them are recognition. The point is that you need to, based on your knowledge of the individuals, figure out what is it that each person is looking for from this role. It may be a combination of some, it may be just one. It's really a key part of figuring out how you're going to lead this team and how you keep them motivated. Can you be trusted? That was the third part on that slide, right? People will trust generally over time when they know who they're following. If you are an enigma to people, if people don't know who you are, hey, I'm Nigel, I'm from Trinidad, I've done this, I've done that, I have kids. I'm not telling you to reveal everything about yourself, but I'm saying become human, become relatable. Just like anybody who's a parent, a guardian, has been in a family, they can't be favorite children, right? You need to tap different people for different things and stretch. If you're tapping the same person all the time, guess what? That's a favorite child, and your team is seeing that. When you say something, follow through, right? Say what you mean. It's really important to me X, and you do that, and then you follow through and you show people how that is important to you. Recognize success, recognize the things that people do every day, day in, day out. I had a manager at the end of every day, he would say, thank you for what you did today. And initially when he did that, I thought, oh wow, that's interesting. And it just ended up being that nice thing to end the day, whether he did something special or not. It was just a reinforcing recognition. I had another manager who every week at the start of his call, he would spend the first couple of minutes recognizing the past week and what had occurred. The more you recognize and celebrate what people do, whether it's related to work, outside of work, it resonates. People feel like they want to be a part of this thing. Support errors of judgment. This is one which may seem a little odd, but it's something that really I've seen through my career that has helped me to take risk and to grow. There will be a tolerance for mistakes. It's how you learn, right? If you're not making a judgment call, and that call has an error rate that comes with it, and instead you're not making a decision at all, then to me, you're more of a failure for not making a decision than for making a decision that you then have to learn from. Take the risk. You can, as a leader, define your tolerance. You can say, I'm okay with an error of X, right? And define that in whatever context makes sense. But you have to allow people to make mistakes. You have to allow people to learn through the process. And you do that by supporting it. You do that by, you're in a meeting, something doesn't quite go right, you support them and you help to take on and shoulder some of what's gone wrong as a consequence of that error judgment. Now, afterwards, you can regroup and you chat with them in private about how to learn from this. But you do that by not just, as I say, saying I'm going to do it, but you visibly support them through dark times. Now, if you notice, I put judgment versus character. I think character flaws are in a very different category, and that is something that I think you should have a low tolerance for. You want people who do the right things, they're honest, they're trustworthy, and those are character things. So let's kind of barrel through to the end here because I'm at time. This has to be a two-way street, right? If I am going to offer feedback, I need to create an environment where people give me feedback. Especially as I got more senior in my career, that was the most difficult thing to do, getting people to give me feedback. So how did I do that? I would quite frankly share the feedback that I got from above. And I said, this is the feedback I have. This is what I'm working on. I know you and I have spoken about these things that you're working on. Knowing what you've heard, is there anything else you would want to tell me? I'd create that space. I would say, okay, we're off the clock here. Really candidly, what did you think about this? I would not lead with my view on something. I had an employee who came to me and he said, Nigel, you ask the team to think about something, but then you lead with your view. Most people take that and they say, well, okay, he's got a view already. We're kind of on a path. So, creating that space for people to speak, respecting what gets said. I think all of those are important to make sure people see this as a two-way street and they're all being treated equally. So parting thoughts. These two resonate a lot with me. The first one is really just in general, whether you're a leader or part of a team, people remember how you made them feel. The rest, some people remember, but not always. What did I do in my first team when I joined IBM? I couldn't tell you. I could tell you exactly how my first manager made me feel. So very important part. And the next part, it connects back to what I said about failure, which is failure is not fatal. I think you have to make mistakes. You have to take risks. You have to take chances within a construct, within a boundary. And as a leader, you have to support that for the team to get better. So thanks very much for your time. Fareed, should we go to Q&A?
Certainly. That was really, really insightful, Nigel. That went a lot deeper than I was expecting in a good way. A lot of good questions are still trickling in.
That was awesome.
So, Chad, I know you had a lot of points you wanted to make. If you want to hit those up front, and then I'll go into some of the questions that we had from before.
Yeah, well there was two parts. Nigel, I love what you just said at the end about the failure is not fatal. I wanted to give something for all that are on here. It's a formula we call the cycle of success, and it's test. So the first step is we got to test. We got to try it, right? So the test, then fail. So part of leadership is expecting, not wanting to fail, but expecting that failure will happen. So we test it, we fail, we learn from the failure, we improve. Now, this is what happens in leadership. A lot of people jump right back in without learning and improving. And the cycle now becomes vicious cycle. It's like, oh, why do I keep seeing the same thing? Because you tested, you failed, and you re-entered, but you didn't learn and improve. So test, fail, learn, improve, then re-enter and be better. So Nigel, I think you hit it dead on. Leaders are, and people in organizations are scared to fail. But failure and success are together. You can't succeed without failing. But I think the best leaders understand that and are able to learn from it. So Fareed, I wanted to give everyone just a kind of little format or a little formula for that. And then the second thing was
Failing forward, essentially, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah, failing forward.
Yeah, that's great.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then the second thing, Nigel, I think I loved what you were saying about the people on the team. Most companies spend more time trying to just get people in the door than they actually do recognizing who is it that I want in the door. I'm a big believer that when you're looking at bringing people into your company, you want to attract the people that you're looking for. And this is the problem now. The companies that are attracting leaders is because they've built a leadership culture. So a follower may follow a leader, but a leader at another company, and let's say we need more leaders in your division, in your organization, we need to build a culture of leadership, and leaders are attracted to leaders. So if you don't have a leadership culture, you're not going to get high level leaders, because why would they want to come to a culture that's not developing and growing and always improving? Because leaders require that in their lives. So I just wanted to say that, Nigel, I think it was awesome how to identify the right people, the right players we need on the team. And if we don't have a leadership culture, it's going to be very difficult to attract quality leaders. They're attracted to each other.
That's exactly right. And I mean, you've done all this work to identify the correct people, and then you lose them through poor supervision, through poor experiences.
Yeah.
That tends to be the biggest loss. When I think about your story with the frogs, who's going to stay on? A large part of that is the engagement people have, the experience they have, and it's shaped by not just the work they're doing, but how they're being led, how they're being motivated, where they see their careers going.
That's great.
Okay, there are a lot here, and I'm totally in agreement with you guys. Some of these questions are they're interesting, and they're not like the last meeting. It must be the subject matter of identified that's really driving this. So Anad has a question that says, where do alumni fit in resourcing and team development? I'll say something real quick on the consulting side. We've recently launched my day job here at Protiviti as managing director. We work with alumni to a very big extent, right? When you're in consulting, there's a revolving door. It's happening now with the grand resignation, but what ends up happening is Peter's principle, people kind of fail to their top aptitude level, I guess you could say. What ends up happening is there comes a point when you're hitting a ceiling, not because the ceiling is there, just because the capabilities of what you've been trained to and what you've experienced kind of position you there. So the alumni network, something that we created, looks for boomerangs and opportunities for boomerangs. Sometimes it may make sense in consulting for someone to take a step back and go into industry to get some of those skills that they may not have received in the field, and then come back. So I'm a huge advocate of that. I think a lot of times we lose that. Some people get that opportunity when they do staff augmentation work, where they're actually working, for example, at Nigel's team, they're working with them and learning that at Morgan Stanley. And then that team goes to USAA, and they go to Citi and so on. They get all of these different things they're learning from different styles, and then they bring that back. That's a different perspective. That's a huge value in maintaining that relationship. Nigel, Chad, anything to add to that?
You want to go first, Chad?
No, Nigel, why don't you go?
Okay. So look, I think alum, they have two, sort of purposes, contributing things that can occur. One is, as you said, sometimes people outgrow a role, right? Sometimes people outgrow an opportunity. As I said, you may have some people on your team that have said to you, and this has happened to me many times, hey, my goal is to migrate to a different country. My goal is to change careers over some period of time, right? So some of this is planned. It's not because you created an environment. This is where somebody wants to go. So when they move, you're hoping that they're going to be ambassadors, right? For the firm that they just left. So you don't want people who have left with a bad experience. Hopefully they've left for something equal or better and it's more aligned, but not because they were pushed out, right? The second bit about alums is you as a leader are balancing those who left and those who stayed, right? And sometimes alums leave, and within a very short period of time, there's a boomerang effect, right? What I got a little bit of buyer's remorse. What I thought I was going to get wasn't quite what I thought, and can I come back? Right. And so, you're really trying to balance that out while keeping the motivation of the team, right? Those people who stayed and were quote unquote loyal, right? I stayed through when Jane left. What are you going to do for me? And I think in those situations, it's really, it's best to be honest, and it's best to talk about, look, I think there could be a role for you here, but, maybe we need to think about somewhere else, right? In the firm, and I'll make that introduction. I'll make that happen. And again, if you know the alum, and you know about their performance, what they bring, they know your culture, they know your fit, they can come in really easily. But short story, they may not come back into the role that they left for all of these other reasons, right?
Yeah. So Nigel, I think, and Fareed, I think that there's three parts. The first thing is that when companies bring on people, right, and then eventually they leave, like you were just speaking to Nigel, I think the best leaders love them on the way out as much as they love them on the way in. It's so easy to be excited because it's a new person joining the team. They got these great talents. And then when they're no longer valuable to the team, then what they do is, I don't really care about this person anymore. But great leaders will actually love them on the way out so that they know that they're valuable on the way out. And I think that creates great ambassadorship, because when people feel valued, then they're not going to come back at you. I think quite frankly, I think a lot of the organizations that struggle with compliance and struggle with human resources, and they have a lot of lawsuits, is because people are not feeling loved on the way out, and they feel like they were kind of like just cut out, right? And kind of almost like felt like they were totally separated from people. Like, put your stuff in the box and get out. So I think it's key is to first value the people, choose to add value to the people. And then the third is, when those people are no longer adding value to the organization, still love them on the way out. And I think you'll be able to have ambassadors.
A very, very good point. I know we don't have much time left here, but we'll try to address these over email. This is a big one. I guess we'll flip this to Nigel first here. Have you experienced managers and staff promising dates and missing those dates and quality consistently? How do you address these without shaking their confidence and join the grand resignation? Staff and management have been very sensitive as of late.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think about coaching when I think about answering that question. So, what I tell people is, it's quote unquote okay to miss a deadline if you're early, right? Don't tell me the day before something is due, it's not going to happen, because chances are weeks ago you knew something wasn't going to happen, right? So help me to help you to manage through this. It also helps me that if your issues are on resources, that I could add more resources, if that's actually a practical thing, right? Oftentimes people have legitimate issues, right? It's not because somebody's underperforming. So the earlier you give the heads up, the more I can help you. What I also do tell people is, you need to have successes, you need to have wins. You can't constantly miss a date, because then people start to think of you as a person that never hits that date. So what I say is, think through the things that are causing you stressors I've had to build teams where I said, this person is the correct person to lead the team because of what they bring, the relationships, the skills, but they are poor project managers. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to also hire a project manager on this team to make sure that there's somebody keeping the drumbeat under this person who I know has what it takes, right? And that's where you kind of supplement the skill based on where that person is.
Yeah, to that point, if you take people out of their giftedness, and giftedness will be one of the steps to developing people, you put them in a situation where it's very hard for them to perform at that level. Quite frankly, most people in corporate America and most people within businesses are operating in weaknesses, and the frustrations that are happening is because we're asking them, we're asking a fish to climb up a tree, and we're asking them to be really good with people when, quite frankly, they are not good with people. So I think it's the leader's job to recognize what the gift and talent of that person, and not asking them to run up. I'll give you a quick example, and then Fareed, I'll hand it over to you. I share often about the, picture this: you have a tree, and you have a fish standing next to the tree, and the fish is flopping around on the bottom of the tree because it's trying to climb up the tree. And eventually they see the squirrel just jump right onto the tree and climb right up. And the fish goes, I'm stupid. What happened there is the fish didn't realize it was never designed to climb up a tree.
Right.
And the fish was designed to be in the water, and the squirrel was designed to climb up the tree. In business, we have people out of place, and that creates a lot of frustration. And when that happens, if people are not gifted in managing timelines, coming back to the question, then they're going to get really frustrated and overwhelmed. So I think we need to be looking at who are the people on the team that can manage deadlines well, can empower people to get those deadlines done, keep open communication, because if not, that fish is going to think it's stupid. And then that's where we have a problem. When a fish is thinking it's stupid because it's out of its wrong position, it's not going to perform well.
That's a good point, because then you start to have bad evaluations, but you were never intended to be in that position to begin with, which opens up that vicious cycle. Very, very good insights. I apologize. I don't mean to go over on this, but some of these questions are so not the kind of questions I want to answer over an email. I'd rather get that out now, if you guys don't mind.
Yeah.
Nigel, to you, do you believe that there is an invisible ceiling for non-white employees to reach leadership positions in a society based on your experience?
So based on my experience, I would say no. Based on the numbers, I can understand the question is being asked. When I became a managing director at Morgan Stanley, the numbers were different then than they are today, because there was intentionality about trying to have a more diverse workforce. When I spoke about stirrers, that's one version of diversity, right? You can't have like-minded people and expect to have great outcomes.
Right.
Do I think that there are ceilings? Look, I'm not naive. I'm not going to say that ceilings don't exist in this world. But what I will say is that I've always pushed through. I've never looked up and said, oh, there's a barrier there that I can't go beyond. I think when you're in a room, act as though you should be in that room. When you have something to say it confidently. People recognize that over time, and you'll get the positions. You'll get the opportunities. At the end of the day, a company has one CEO, that person has 7 directs, so on and so forth, so 6. You're not going to create another role for somebody. So you have to figure out how you make yourself eligible for that role. And I think some of that is as much you as it is the mindset of the leadership. So look at the firm you're in, look at what they talk about as their values and their culture. And as long as you see the correct words around diversity, inclusion, leading, recognizing talent, recognizing ideas, then it's really up to you.
Thank you for that. And then I'll give this to both of you guys to close down. This is a very interesting one. I'm gonna be honest with you. The kind of questions I wasn't expecting to see today. So appreciate you guys asking the questions, and it's anonymous for a reason, so we understand. How can we manage bad managers? I had a series of them keep putting me down in front of others so that the manager could look the part and make sure others believe me as a follower or inexperienced, while I could take their jobs. Wow, that's a deep one. Chad, you want to take that first?
Yeah. So the first part of that is we sometimes don't have the ability to choose who we answering to, but we certainly have the ability to protect who we are. So I'm going to give you an example. I always talk about role versus identity. And the reason why I talk about role versus identity is because we don't know what type of leaders that we're going to have to follow. We may be following someone who's belittling us all the time, which could really hurt who we are, right? But the thing that I've always taught leaders, and I've taught myself, is always separate role and identity. So as an example, the role, that leader can tell me I'm doing a terrible job in my role, and that's okay. But that leader will never make me feel that I'm not a 10. 1 to 10, I'm a 10. And now I'm a person of faith, so I believe that God made me as a 10. So that's the reason why I'm a 10. Whether I'm not looking to push my faith on anyone, but I'm a 10, and that's the reason why I won't allow other people to affect my identity. Now, at my role level, I may be performing crappy, or I may be performing well, and he's not or she or he is not recognizing my performance in my role, or maybe they just don't want to. Maybe they want to keep suppressing me. But I'll say this as a leader: do never allow anyone, and I mean this very, 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 very direct. Never allow anyone to impact your identity. We allow people to maybe impact our role, but our identity, when people start impacting your identity, that's a very toxic area that you need to really start looking at maybe a different company or a different position, because when the two become one, there's a major problem. And my job with leaders is to develop them to recognize role and identity are very different.
Nigel, any personal experience on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm somebody who acts. So if I'm in a situation which I think is toxic, I'm going to speak up. And I think time and place is important when you do things like that. I find a time and a place which is unrelated and unconnected, and I say, look, you need to understand this is how you're being perceived, and whether you think that perception is reality, this is the impact that it's having. And so, you have some choices to make. And, I had my very first job in IBM. IBM was going through its own great restructuring. Lugerson had come on, and it was thousands of people worldwide. I'm this new guy that just came in from this school that they're trying before they buy. Oh my gosh, this is a really big deal. And, we were talking about my experience, and, we got to change, right? And how you manage change in an organization. And I asked the question, I said, well, how do you compel somebody to respond to this vision you're creating? And he said, you can't change the people, you change the people. And I say that in this context because if your situation is one which is toxic, then you have a choice. You can change it, you can leave. And so I think it's, for your own peace of mind, for your own safety, no, you should make sure that you've employed every avenue if this is the job that you want, right, to be heard. And that may be a skip level, that may be a peer, talking to a peer of that manager and saying, I know you're a peer of this person, I feel I can talk to you, I don't feel I can talk to them. It'd be really helpful if you could help them see this blind spot, because sometimes it is a blind spot. And I've done that. I've had a manager who was trying to get a candidate promoted, and 2 years in a row they didn't get promoted, and they were like, I don't understand why this person's not getting promoted. And I said, but you stand up on one end of the corridor and you make disparaging remarks about this person along the corridor, and everybody's laughing, and then that's the candidate you want us to look at and go, yes, they're ready. You're not supporting them through your actions. And so I think, you have to act is the long and short of it, but you certainly don't have to accept, which is what Chad is saying.
Yeah, one thing I would even add to that is, and I've seen this, unfortunately, to a very large degree over the last year, very large degree, bad managers is by intent. Mm-hmm. If they're intentionally putting people down or intentionally driving a project into a wall, it's significant. If people are inundated and people have a lot going on, especially in this remote environment, it's a different game altogether. Don't kill the messenger, right? But if someone's intentionally doing that and you go to leadership's smart enough to be able to communicate with these individuals in a way that it does not blow back on you. I'm not talking about going to HR. I'm not talking about throwing people under a bus, literally talking to management to have that one-on-one discussion, and everyone usually gets that one talk. and they could have that talk before anything goes any further than that. When someone's intentionally putting someone down, it's very clear what they're trying to do. There could be reasons for it that we're not aware of. I come from the school of slap me twice, so I would have that discussion first. If something happens again, it's not going to be from me or management. It'll probably be from HR, and then discussions will happen from there, which will probably be a second chance. But beyond that, to Chad's earlier point, it's not for you anymore. This positioning, maybe it's the environment, maybe things are becoming too pressurized. And in this environment, certainly things are. But I hope that answered the question. There's no easy answer from what Nigel was just saying, and from what Chad was just saying. You know, sometimes just changing the scenery is not the answer either. It's really about sometimes looking in and understanding, do I have an element to this? Am I contributing to this? What's happening around me? And how can my reaction to the stimuli change this scenario? So thank you all. Nigel, I'll give you any last comments, and then Chad, with the last 2 minutes, just bring up the next topic for 2 months from now. Nigel?
No, look, thank you. I recognize it's a global audience. A lot of people are taking different times out of their day. Hopefully this was useful to you. I enjoyed the questions. I enjoyed the experience. I will say, making a playback for Isaka, please think about how you can contribute to your chapter. There's lots of great stuff that could be done when we come together.
That's awesome.
It's an honor and a privilege to have you, Nigel. And we're hoping that at the end of our pilot, we'll bring back some of these amazing speakers like you, Jim Embersini, and some of the folks that we have on the continuum. So thanks for thank from the chapter. Thank you for taking the time to present today and spend the time putting that deck together. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And Fareed, I want to thank you for your leadership, because I think what you're doing is going to have a very, very long impact on people, because this whole leadership continuum part, it doesn't stop here, it continues. So they take something and runs. I remember when I was young, when I was just starting in business, and I had a few people say one or two things to me, and it made all the difference in my life. And it was just one word that changed the course of my life. So I think what you're doing and the ISACA board is putting together, I think is going to have a ripple effect for many, many years to come. So kudos to you guys. And Nigel, my friend, I really enjoyed you sharing today, and a lot of wisdom, a lot of experience. And I just hope that the people that were listening were really taking that in. And for those of you that are on here, I want to thank you for spending time with us on this leadership continuum, the ISACA original. I want to encourage you, in 2 months from now, I'm going to be sharing a message on awareness, how important it is. Because what I've recognized as I've developed myself over the last 20 years as a leader, I've recognized that the areas that I struggled the most was in the areas that I had the least awareness. And the areas that I excel in is the areas that I have the highest level of awareness. So in 2 months from now, when we get back and we do our next session, I'm going to be sharing a formula that can help you where you are and anyone that you're working with to recognize where things broke down, so that you can help grow and increase in that area of your career or in your area of your life. So I want to encourage you to join. I want to encourage you to share. Go back and listen to the last one if you weren't on there, because we're going through 8 steps to developing people, and today was the second step. So if you heard the first one, great. If not, go back to ISACA's website and you can watch it there. I want to thank both of you gentlemen for being on, and the board for giving me the ability to do this and spend time with all of you. So I thank you guys, and tremendously blessed.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Nigel.
Bye,
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Chad. Appreciate you guys. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye.